I am the ghost of Christmas future and you are Scrooge. If you continue with your poor health habits, you won't be around much longer and you won't be available to help Tiny Tim and your nieces and nephews. This is the typical course of life for people who behave like you, and I will show it to you in more detail. High-fat diet, animal protein, excessive sodium, excess iron, processed food, tap water, coffee, tea, soda, milk, excess stress, sleep deprivation, lack of a sense of purpose, lack of religion, divorce, social isolation, loneliness, sedentary lifestyle. All of these things contribute to sickness. It tends to begin with fatty liver and obesity, leading to hypertension and diabetes. Almost all patients have this. This is considered normal aging in Western countries. The lack of dietary fiber produces abdominal pressure syndrome as described by Dennis Burkitt, constipation, diverticulosis, hiatal hernia, gastroesophageal reflux, GERD. They also get leaky gut from the lack of fiber, high dietary fats and the oils and the medications, and they get autoimmune disease, poor dentition, they lose their teeth, they have leaky, periodontitis causing the same problems as leaky gut. They get cataracts at an early age. Dairy contributes to that. Sea dog is just the visual diseases that lead to blindness. They're all vascular and related to diet. Cataracts, diabetes, age-related macular degeneration, hypertension, glaucoma. Spinal degeneration, primarily ischemic, but also from substitution problems related to F- and GP in the processed food and the tap water. This plugs up arteries, causing progressive atherosclerosis throughout the body, CAD, coronary artery disease, PAD, peripheral arterial disease in the legs, difficulty walking, claudication. Plugs up the arteries to the Johnson, impotence. Plugs up the arteries to the brain, cerebrovascular disease, cerebrovascular accidents, strokes, cognitive decline. The typical chump trusts the conventional medical system to save them, and they're passive in terms of their own efforts to help themselves. Conventional medicine initially just works with drugs, drug. Then it's time for surgery, chop, root canals, dental implants, knee and hip replacements, stents, CABG, which means coronary artery bypass graft, open heart surgery, cataract surgery. And that's the typical signature of the cognitively impaired patient. Cataract on one or both sides, poor dentition, atrophic brain. I see that all day long. Almost all the patients have that. Pain, poverty, misery, hassles of having to go to the drugstore all the time, having to go to all the doctor's appointments, having all these complications, feeling weaker, more tired, feeling less cognitively sharp, brain fog, general stupidity, needing other people to take care of you more than they should because you're so weak and debilitated and sick due to self-inflicted disease, and then an early death. Must it be this way, O Spirit? Is there anything else I could do? Yes, you are here on this map of life, the voyage of life. And you can do like the typical chump as we just described. This is man's way. It's expensive, it's painful, and it seldom works. Or you can go the route of the low-fat vegan with no oil, whole foods, single ingredient foods only, no processed foods, organic only, no oil, no caffeine, no alcohol. Avoid other toxins. Filter your water, whole house carbon filter, kitchen reverse osmosis filters. Have a purpose in life. Try to do good for somebody else, either your children, your family, your students, your athletes, if you're a coach, whatever it might be. Get your sunshine for vitamin D. Do some exercise. Just get moving. Get adequate sleep. Practice one of the major religions. Be social. Be nice. That's God's way. It's free. You have to pay for food anyways, and it usually works. You'll probably, in the ballpark, live to around 90. You got a good chance to get there, and you'll have a good health span, being relatively healthy most commonly up until you're about the time of your death, compared to the average person sick and debilitated much before that. Here's the curves of life. The sad diet eater, they're usually fat, sick, and not functioning so great by their mid to late 40s, okay, and then they're dead by their early 60s or sooner. Mediterranean diet people, like a lot of doctors, they think they're smarter than the average bear, but really they're not doing too well. pretty routine for doctors to be fat and sick, and they don't know nutrition, epidemiology, toxicology. Mediterranean diet is a joke. I call it the antichrist of diets because it hardly forbids anything. It allows alcohol, olive oil, canola oil, meat, fish, chicken, dairy. It's basically stupid. Okay, and then here's a low-fat vegan, and they've got a good chance to get around 90. Okay, and the other thing is, the average stupid person, they trust conventional medicine. Here is Circe from the book of Odysseus, the ancient Greeks, and she had turned the men into swine because they had drank her potion. There's a quote from Revelations, the Bible. It's chapter 18, verse 23. For thy merchants were the powerful men of the earth, and by their sorceries were men deceived. The other word for sorcery is pharmakia, which is the other word for pharmacology. The average chump thinks drugs and surgery are real and plants are fake. I can't tell you how many patients I've had roll their eyes at me when I talk about plant-based diets, but it's quite the opposite that is true. It's the plants that were designed by God for us. They're the ones that promote our health. The drugs turn you into a cow. Like Circe, the sorcerer, you are turned into a cow, a cash cow for the medical system, which milks you every day as you take all your pills, with the average middle-aged American taking 5 or 10 pills, okay? Like a chump, losing your money every day for nonsense, for drugs that don't work. You can't cure a dietary disease with a pill. And most of these people, the vast majority, 99% of Westerners, they end up in the pit of doom. They go, doctor, save me, help, help. And it just keeps raining on them. One sob story after another. Nothing gets better. They keep getting worse. They trust the so-called experts of the conventional system, and they go to the doctor for help. And the doctor throws down a rope into the pit of doom with drugs, drug after drug after drug. But they just don't work. Then the rare smart prole with the ability to think for himself says, you know what, screw that drug routine. I'm going to learn how to save myself. Learns about the diet, exercises, gets their sleep, practices one of the major religion, dedicates themselves to a good purpose in life, gets their sleep, learns about nutrition and whatever else is relevant to them in health. And as the honest doctors say, the patient is the one who has all the power, because the patient is the one who chooses to eat the right foods, to avoid toxins, to filter their water, to get their sleep, to dedicate their life to a good purpose, to get their sunshine. And that is the path to health. As Dennis Burkitt said, the only way we're ever going to become healthy is if we go back to our ancient ways of eating plant-based diets. And as the Bible says in Genesis 1:29, then God said, behold, I have given you every plant which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree which has fruit, it shall be food for you.